Hi everybody, Dana Litwin here again with more Tuesday tips for leaders of volunteers. And this week talking about some presentation or speaking tips, whether that's in person in the room or over Zoom. A fun conversation came up with some colleagues who had just done a presentation that they didn't think went well, and they were kind of talking about, oh, what a terrible audience. Wow, what was wrong with them? And I chimed into the conversation and the thread that, hey, guess what? It's never the audience's fault if you flop. It never is. It's your responsibility to know your content and be able to go with whatever happens, go with the flow, and change or adjust what you are doing in every moment if you feel like people in the room are falling asleep or looking at you confused or cross-armed and hostile. You have a chance in every single moment to re-engage, reconnect with the audience. If you think about it this way, it takes a lot of the stress away. I know public speaking can be a very stressful, fearful thing for a lot of people, but think about what do you control during the session and what do you not control. Something you do not have any control of is how anybody in the audience is feeling or doing that day. You can read the room in person or over Zoom or WebEx, things like that. You can read the room and try to get a sense of that. You can start with really good housekeeping and kind of setting expectations of your presentation, either someone introducing you or you saying it yourself of this is how we're going to interact today. You can have questions along the way or save them to the end, but kind of it's called setting the crowd, and I have another little video that dives deeper into that, but kind of setting people's expectations for what kind of show they're here for helps a lot. And then if something does go off the rails, you're kind of all in it together and you can go, oh, well, I might cut out, or that seems like Zoom's being glitchy, but hey, let's keep going with this. And when you know what you can control and what you can't, what you can control is knowing and being extremely familiar backwards and forwards with your own content and all of the technical or logistical aspects of the presentation. So in person, scout the space, ask for a tech run. Over Zoom or WebEx, same thing. Most conferences have some sort of tech run to make sure that your setup and camera and microphone is going to work with their video platform. So as much as you can, the shape of show is going to be impacted by the medium you are in, but also be able to adapt to that as much as possible. And there's going to naturally be less engagement when you are over Zoom or WebEx than when you're in person, but we can adjust to that. Reading the room. Again, easier in person, but not impossible over Zoom, even when people are muted and have their cameras off. Read the room, know your audience. Is this the right audience for you in this topic? Hopefully so. You may not have control over who's showing up to this, but how it's marketed and how you describe your session can help people self-select if this is going to be the right thing for them. Over Zoom, reading the room, usually if you can get somebody to be the technical driver of the presentation, that's going to free you up to just concentrate on your session, but sometimes you have to kind of be the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain doing everything. But hopefully you can just concentrate on your session and your material, and that also frees up a little brain space and concentration to make adjustments if you have to, depending on if you feel like you're losing people, they're not answering polls, they're not answering a chat, they're not engaging. Make sure there isn't a technical issue with the platform that you're on, that they can actually use the chat, use the Q&A function, raise hands, use emojis, things like that. How to read the room in person. I mean, something very obvious is someone yawning or snoozing in the corner or whatever. You don't have to have everybody's attention all the time. You just want to have most people's attention or engagement or be connecting with them most of the time. If someone is taking notes and not looking at you, don't call them out for like, hey, eye contact, buddy. Never blame the audience. Never call them out on any negative stuff. Again, it's never their fault. You are the presenter. You are in control of your content and your material, and you can drive how that goes. If you know your material very, very well and you're reading the room that this section isn't really going over, skip it. jump sections. Know your material well enough to edit on the fly, to be able to skip to something, even if it's a slideshow, skip ahead, or if it's more of a discussion or a panel, or there's a co-presenter, start to work off of that other person and kind of get into discussions, open that up more. I also find, whether you're online or in person, if you know that you have friends or colleagues in the audience, call on them. Those are automatically supporters of you. No one in the audience wants you to fail, especially your friends. So if other people are not jumping into chat or answering polls and things, then check with your friends ahead of time if you know they're going to be there and say, hey, is it okay if things kind of slow down if I call on you and we unmute you, or I call on you in the audience and we have a little conversation. Sometimes it just needs that to kind of break the ice and get the momentum going. And then, unconsciously, that makes everybody else a little more comfortable to have the interaction. But it's hard for strangers, if they don't know you, to be sometimes it's hard for them to be the first one to say something and speak out. If you think about knowing your material really well, that you can adapt it, change it up, edit it, skip ahead, add more content in if you're on an interesting tangent and it's not going to eat into the time of your session or eliminate something else that needs to be covered, then kind of improvise and ad lib as much as you can with your knowledge on the topic. A vocal technique that I strongly recommend is warming up your voice, warm up your breath and your instrument and even your face, like make funny faces, for at least 5 minutes before you start an in-person or online session. And also think about if you have a co-presenter, ask them to maybe go through vocal exercises with each other so that you're more in tune with each other, that you can read each other's body language, especially if you're not already close friends or colleagues. That's kind of a good thing to get to know. This is their speaking style and their pace. What can I do that complements or counterpoints or contrasts with them in an interesting, harmonious way? Do dress rehearsals and tech runs on your own. Even if you have a tech run for a big conference and you have a co-presenter, then meet in the lobby of a conference hotel, meet in a room, meet in a park, wherever, and kind of run through stuff together and get each other's timing down. That's especially helpful if you're working with someone who might be more nervous of a public speaker, or one or the other of you is a more confident public speaker than the other. Rehearsing together can kind of help get some of those stage fright jitters out. If you are on a panel, or you're going to be part of a panel, again, just knowing the logistics and the content or what kinds of questions will be asked, check in with the host and see, do you prefer to have us just popcorn answer, or do you want to call on us? So again, just having an understanding of the shape of show and setting and meeting those expectations for folks as attendees, participants in the audience at the very, very beginning of how this is going to go and how they can interact with you appropriately. And again, just never turn on people. Never call out like, well, that guy's sleeping in the corner. Who cares? You don't know what's going on with their life. They could be exhausted. They could be ill. They could be coming off of a 12-hour flight from somewhere. Let them do their thing. Unless they're snoring loudly, let people do their thing. And the same thing with Zoom. Sometimes you have to mute everybody, but encourage them to talk to each other in the chat, ask you where you're from, how's the weather, something to kind of just get that going, and that they can, over Zoom or WebEx or whatever platform you're on, use emojis and clapping hands or raise their hand and kind of set that up. Vocally, warm up about 5 minutes beforehand, and think of your voice, your instrument, and how you can adjust your speaking style and pace as you can speak faster or slower. You can speak louder, especially in person, or softer. And you can speak high. Your voice can go high, which can be kind of interesting. I'm doing this in the extreme, but you get the idea. Or your voice can be low and more serious. So play with your vocal range, play with pacing, play with pausing, dramatic pause, and watch plenty of other YouTube or Vimeo videos on public speaking and some of my other Tuesday Tip videos on some very specific techniques. But if you think about fast, slow, loud, soft, high-low, and not speaking in a monotone, just reading the script like a robot, and just that's gonna bore people to death if you are in that monotone. So play with your voice, play with your instrument, know your material. If you have a chance to, there's plenty of usually free or pay what you can drop-in online improv classes. So take some improv classes online. There's probably something in person near you, a local improv theater or like Improv in the Park or something that's more COVID conscious. So, play with how you speak. And remember that it's never the audience's fault. It's never their fault if you flop. There's always something you can do different. They don't know the script. So if you do make a mistake, just do your best to roll with it and keep on going and never stop and super duper focus on that and let that throw you off or get you spun out in your own head or your own nerves. So just go with the flow, know your content, set up the shape of show and housekeeping, read the room in person or over Zoom, and you will be set up for success in any kind of presentation or performance that you are doing. So I hope, as always, you enjoy these Tuesday tips, and we'll see you next week with a couple of special guests. Take care.